Hello, I'm Ruth at the Garrett Public Library, and I'm here again for another session of our Railroader reading. I have two short stories to share with you today, and I hope you enjoy them. Our first one is Debbie Fields Gets Oriented. Debbie Fields is at a party with her husband, Randy Fields, a well-known economist and futurist. Debbie, just 19, has quit work to play the role of conventional wife, and her self-esteem is suffering. The guests fawn over Randy, soliciting his economic forecast. But when the same guests discover that Debbie is a housewife, they suddenly remember conversations they desperately need to have on the other side of the room. They treat Debbie like an absolute zero. Finally, the host of the party besieges Debbie with questions. She tries hard to be what she really isn't: sophisticated, urbane, clever. Finally, he asks in an exasperated tone, "What do you intend to do with your life?" By now, a nervous wreck, Debbie blurts, "Well, I'm mostly trying to get orientated." "The word is oriented," snaps the host. "There is no such word as orientated. Learn to use the English language." Debbie is destroyed. On the way home, she cries nearly nonstop, but out of the hurt of a resolve is born. She will never, never, never let such a thing happen again. She will no longer live in anyone else's shadow. She will find something of her own. But what? One thing Debbie had always loved doing was making great chocolate chip cookies. She experimented with recipes since she was 13 years old, adding more butter, less flour, more and different kinds of chocolate until she hit on a combination that she felt was ideal: soft, butter-laden, and crammed with so many chocolate chips that if one more were added, the whole cookie would collapse. So Debbie has this idea. She will open up a little store and sell her cookies. "Bad idea," Randy's business friends say, their mouths full of cookies. "It'll never work." They shake their heads as they lick the last bits of chocolate from their fingers. Forget it, Randy felt the same way. So did the loan officer she approached for financing. Notwithstanding, at 9 a.m. on August 18, 1977, when Debbie was 20 years old, she opened the doors to Mrs. Fields' Chocolate Chippery in nearby Palo Alto, California. The only problem was nobody came to buy cookies. By noon, she was desperate. "I decided if I were going to go out of business," she said, "at least I'd go out in style." So she loaded up a tray and began walking around the shopping arcade where her store was located. Trying to give away cookies, nobody would take them, she said. Undaunted, she went out on the street and began begging, pleading, and wheedling until people took her samples. It worked. Once people tried the cookies, they loved them and came back to the shop for more. By the end of the day, she had sold $50 worth. On day 2, she took in $75. The rest is cookie history. "I owe my life to the word oriented," said Debbie. Today, Debbie Fields is chairwoman and chief cookie lover of Mrs. Fields Incorporated, the market leader among fresh-baked cookie stores. With over 600 stores and 1,000 corporate employees, Mrs. Fields Cookies has sales in the multi-millions. A mother of 5, Debbie continues to share her winning philosophy with entrepreneurs and business groups around the world. Now I have another story. It's entitled "When Dreams Won't Die." Ever since I can remember, I've been fascinated by beauty. As a young girl surrounded by the numbing sameness of all those cornfields around Indianapolis, The glamorous worlds of fashion and cosmetics were a magnificent escape for me. Every time I looked at the advertisements in women's magazines, all those gorgeous models with flawless skin and expertly applied makeup, their status quo bodies adorned with incredible designer outfits, I was whisked away to exotic places I could only revisit in dreams. The Revlon ads were especially wonderful, but there was only one problem. Not one ad in those days featured a woman of color like me. Still, there was a whisper of wisdom inside me telling me that someday my dream would come true and I would have a career in the cosmetics industry. Very few companies bothered to market cosmetics to women of color in those days, but my inspiration came from C.J. Walker, the first African American woman to become a millionaire. She started out with $2 and a dream, right in my hometown. She earned the fortune at the turn of the century with her own line of hair care products just for women like herself. I graduated from college with a degree in public health education. Before long, I got a job with a leader in the pharmaceuticals industry and became the first African American woman to sell pharmaceuticals in Indiana. People were shocked that I took the job because a woman of color selling encyclopedias in my territory had just been killed. In fact, when I started, the physicians I dealt with looked at me as if I had two heads. But eventually, my uniqueness worked to my advantage. The doctors and nurses remembered me, and I reversed the negative halo effect by doing the job better than other people. Along with pharmaceuticals, I sold them Girl Scout cookies and helped the nurses with their makeup. They began to look forward to my coming, not just for the novelty, but because we enjoyed such heartwarming visits. Within 2 years, I'd broken numerous sales records and was recognized as a distinguished sales representative, formerly an all-white male club. I was looking forward to some hard-earned commission checks when suddenly the company decided to subdivide the region and hired a handsome blond man to take my place. He would enjoy the fruits of my labor, while I was reassigned to another area that needed a lot of work. At this point, my dream of that cosmetics career with Revlon seemed a million miles away. Discouraged and disenchanted, I picked up and moved to Los Angeles. Then, one Sunday, as I searched longingly through the ads in the Los Angeles Times, there it was, a classified ad for a regional manager job with Revlon. I lit up completely and dove for the phone first thing Monday morning. The voice at the other end said that due to overwhelming response, Revlon was taking no more resumes. I was devastated, but then a dear friend said to me, "Marilyn, I know you aren't going to let this job slip through your fingers. Go on down there anyway." Suddenly inspired and determined to turn the challenge into an adventure, I drove down to the Marriott where they were conducting interviews. When I arrived, a desk clerk curtly informed me that there was no way I could get an interview, nor would Mr. Rick English take my resume. I walked away smiling. At least I now had the name of the man I needed to see. I decided to have lunch to listen for the whisper of wisdom that would provide me with a new strategy. Sure enough, the idea came to me to explain my situation to the cashier as I was about to leave the restaurant. She immediately picked up the phone to find out what room Mr. English was in. "Room 515, she said, turning to me. My heart began to pound. I stood outside room 515, said a prayer, and knocked on the door. The minute he opened the door, I said, "You haven't met the best person for the job because you haven't talked to me yet." He looked stunned and said, "Wait a minute until I finish this interview and I'll speak to you." When I entered the room, I was clear and firm that this job was for me, and I got the job. My first day at Revlon was like a dream come true. They hired me to market a new line of hair care products designed especially for people of color. And by the time I'd worked there 3 years, the public was beginning to demand natural, cruelty-free products. With public sentiment on my side, here was my chance. Once again, listening to the whisper of wisdom inside me, I opened my cosmetics company, which to this day continues to give me a sense of fulfillment impossible to describe. I truly believe we should never give up on our hopes and dreams. The path may be rocky and twisted, but the world is waiting for that special contribution each of us was born to make. What it takes is the courage to follow those whispers of wisdom that guide us from inside. When I listen to that, I expect nothing less than a miracle. And that was written by Marilyn Johnson Kondwani. I hope you enjoyed our reading today, and I hope you'll enjoy us next week for another reading with Railroader Reading. Thank you.